Working. It appears that we are live. How's it going, everybody? Thank you so much, and welcome to the stream. You already know what's going down. It's your boy Syntell with the Intel, and you see I got a special guest. Yo, this guy right here, I check non-stop. I'm talking about daily on Twitter, daily on YouTube. He always brings the heat on anything hot and new coming up. Elliot, yo, tell the people what's going on with Movie Files.
First off, man, loving the energy on this Wednesday. I'm in Missouri. It's kind of a weary, dreary day, but I'm loving the energy, man. I'm glad to be here and talking about this film that I was very much anticipated, man. I'm psyched to talk about it with you.
Yes, and in case you don't know and you're just hopping on the stream, we are going to be talking about David Fincher's latest project, The Killer. Not the Chow Yun Fat The Killer, but this new version of The Killer. There's some interesting things going on in this movie. So just to give you all a heads up, we're going to talk for maybe like the first 10, 15, maybe even 20 minutes, just giving non-spoilers. So it's all good for you to come in here if you're interested, and we're not going to spoil anything. We're just going to talk about maybe like first reactions. And then after that, this is why you should stay, because we're going to get down to the nitty gritty on what we really feel about this project. So off the top, just overall, man, how'd you feel about it?
You know, when I saw it last night, I'm gonna be honest. I was kind of shocked by how simple and streamlined the story was, especially if you're a fan of David Fincher like I am, whether it's, Zodiacs, Gone Girl, the list goes on, Panic Room. I mean, the man is just a genius when it comes to crafting stories, even if it's not like his own original idea. Like, we know this is based on a graphic novel or even something, based on books that he's done before. I was just shocked by how simple it was. But 24 hours later, as I've kind of slept on the film, thought about the film more, I've really come to appreciate the simplicity allows you to focus on the craftsmanship of this film. Like, it is a well-polished, well-put-together film. We talk about it all the time. And in the movie space, sequels, reboots, and all the big blockbuster budget films, we don't get those kind of crime noir assassin movies like mid-budget films that we used to get back in the 90s and the early 2000s. So it's kind of a throwback to that with that simple approach to the story that makes you appreciate the cinematography, the Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor's score, and just all the little minute details, which we know Fincher is very detailed oriented. He's a perfectionist, and you can see that throughout the crafting in the film. But some of the shortcomings is with the story, because it is very familiar and it doesn't really offer anything new to the genre.
Okay. That's a really good way to break it down to the very beginning. You said something that really made my ears perk, and that is something to the effect of this being based off of a graphic novel. Can you speak a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so I personally haven't read the graphic novel. I'm gonna probably dive into it because I've heard some things about it. I was talking to some fellow critics when we saw it last night, and they were just kind of sharing the basis of the graphic novel is very much so a geopolitical type of story, and the character, the killer, who is unnamed in the film as well as in the comic, he does his missions are more so targeted in a more precise way of why he's doing what he's doing, versus when we see the film, there's not much rhyme or reason. As we get this, we'll talk about later in the spoilers, but there's a whole monologue explaining he is kind of emotionless when it comes to how he decides to kill the people, how he goes on this mission. There's like really no rhyme or reason to it. So I'm gonna probably look, it's a French graphic novel based, but I'm gonna probably read into it, just kind of see, that's much different than what the film is. And I'm very curious if David Fincher ever does, it's going to be on Netflix, so we don't get that physical media, which seems to be dying here in the future. But I'm very curious to know why he decided to go less of the political reasoning behind the killings versus the more streamlined, hey, it's just $1 and I'm here to kill someone.
All right. Yeah, I've always been a fan of when I hear a graphic novel kind of like being adapted. I think one of the greatest adaptations of a graphic novel of all time was 300. It was literally panel for panel. I think this may not, even though I haven't read the comic, from the way that you're describing it, this isn't necessarily a panel for panel rendition. This is probably going to have it's going to have its own agency. It's going to kind of like do its own thing. Is that a good thing for moving over from original IP to the screen, or should it kind of like take the Zack Snyder effect and kind of be beat for beat?
I guess it just depends on the source material, because I would imagine someone like David Fincher, who I always appreciate just how he brings his approach to films and what he decides to focus on. He's very much a character-driven type of director. So I would imagine the reason he probably didn't put that aspect to the story is because it probably didn't add much to what he was going for, which was kind of focusing on this psycho killer assassin and what makes him tick, why he's so meticulous, how he's talking in his head, thinking that he's such a perfectionist, but really he's not, he's messing up in this film quite a bit that we see. So I think Fincher, and again, not having read the graphic novel quite yet, but I think Fincher just probably found it more intriguing to focus on this character more so than like, who's the man behind the gun? What, how did he get in this position and things of that nature? I think he was just more focused on, he has a mission at hand, he has his task, and he's just going to do that. And we're following him through this, 2 hour and 10-minute film versus, again, not getting all the minutia, peeling all the onion of the layers of the character. So I think he was more concerned about who is this person, more so about like why they're doing what they're doing.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that was well said. So let me ask you a question regarding just the actors. We got some heavy hitters in this bad boy.
Man. Yeah.
And maybe they may not necessarily even be household names. There's one in particular that I wanted to point out. Was a guy that was in the House of the Dragons. Charles Parnell, I think is what his name is. But he is a tour de force when it comes to his presence. And then of course you got Tilda Swinton that's in it as well. Michael Fassbender. You don't even really have to say anything. You already know what he brings to the screen. How did you feel about these thespians in their bag?
I think with Fincher's approach, he's again, if you guys know him, he's like, if you're moving a pencil from one side of the table to the next, it takes like 40 takes for him because he's such a perfectionist. I think he chooses his cast perfectly. I think they fit within this world that he's trying to create, especially when we talk about Fassbender here. So I think the cast comes together well. The only one that I thought stood out of the cast, because they got the most screen time to me, was Tilda Swinton. Even though it was one scene, it was a very prolonged scene and a really well, acted out scene. But I thought collectively the cast came together to kind of fit within this narrative. But again, the spotlight was on the person that we see on the screen now, which is Michael Fassbender. He didn't disappoint for me. He definitely is like a stereotypical David Fincher, like right out of a David Fincher mind type of character. Like he fits perfectly in the kind of the craftsmanship that he likes to have with his characters.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with a lot of everything that you're saying regarding that. Well, you know what? I forgot the term. What is it? A good artist, some great artist steal. What's the word? Maybe you can help me with
I know what you say. Yeah, I know what you say.
Right.
Yeah.
and as great as Fincher is, and he's head above shoulders among most, about 90% of the curve. But there's always going to be a bit of a throwback. Maybe a hat tip or a head nod to some other previous projects. Was there anything that kind of like that popped up that our viewers who are looking forward to seeing this can maybe, sink their teeth in as far as getting a better understanding of what they're walking into?
And I'll just, because there's so many great so many movies within the genre of kind of neo-noir, crime action, but sticking to the Fincher of it all, if you are a Fincher fan, I would say this has kind of the stylized approach to something as simple as the approach of like a home invasion from like Panic Room, right? That's a simple story, people breaking into the house, a daughter and a mother trying to survive the night, but it's very stylized in how he shot that film. So it kind of has that, this story very much so is a simple story of revenge, assassin trying to avenge someone that was affected by some of his wrongdoings or his mistake on one of his missions. So even though it has that simple storytelling, it has a very stylized approach like a Panic Room. It has a very interesting sense of humor, very much so in the vein of like someone would say maybe like Social Network, where it is a very serious topic. You have all these court proceedings and whatnot, but Fincher was able to find, with the the great script that he had, was able to find some of the levity within the moments, some of the humor in the moments. And I found this film to find interesting ways to bring in comedic beats, whether it's the killer's different names that he used from like sitcom characters or people that we would have known from the 70s or 80s, or some of the more ridiculous moments that he finds himself in. So I find this to be a mixture of, again, Panic Room with a little bit of the comedy of a Social Network, with the kind of the bruteness and raw and kind of action beats of like a girl with a dragon tattoo type of flavor.
Oh, okay. There's some really good examples.
Cocktail there. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Let me pull on your coattails a little bit and get dragged into this conversation regarding some of the hat tips. There was a few that kind of hit me. One is there was there's a steeliness to the protagonist that at times felt a little American Psycho, a little bit. Even though American Psycho did definitely have a whole different 180 when you get a chance to know the character a little bit better. But in the beginning, there's a coldness of it. There's a fight scene that is absolutely, to me, it was a highlight of the entire movie.
100%.
And it felt a lot. The closest thing that I can compare it to was probably like Eastern Promises, the bathhouse scene. It felt kind of raw, felt really, really visceral. It felt dangerous.
Right.
So that, and then of course, like, you got your old throwback kind of assassin movies. You can't talk about a French novel about an assassin and not talk about Leon, the professional, aka the professional. But this movie takes different tones than let's just say like Leon, the professional. This character is very focus driven. I guess that's the best way I can describe it. And he says kind of like in the very beginning, this isn't a spoiler. He kind of just says, he's like, I may not necessarily be the best at what I do, but I have a process. And you kind of go through this process with him at length. But it works. It kind of works. There were some things that there were some things that I was a little concerned with that dive heavily into that area, and we'll get into that more in detail. But just from a surface level, what were some of the things that it may not have moved you? Some of the not necessarily the good, bad, and the ugly, but just something that you know what I'm saying, like
Yeah, I mean, again, I can appreciate a simple story, and some of this. Sometimes the best things in life can be simple, but within that simplicity of the storytelling, it lacks some of the character. There's really not a character arc. The character is who they are at the beginning all the way to the end, essentially, with maybe a couple more, bodies on their count with the kills that he has. But yeah, there's not a lot of character growth. There's not as much backstory to prior to this particular mission, how he got involved to be an assassin. Like, you don't get all that stuff. There's also a lack of unfortunately, without a lack of backstory of the character, the motivations are very, generic in a sense. You did something wrong to me, I'm going to get back at you. So within that lack of motivation and lack of character development and lack of relationship development, things don't have the punch that I think they probably would have had if you would have spent a little more time on establishing certain things. Very much so, as we'll talk about probably in the spoilers, the person that drives him to getting the revenge, like we spend all of less than a minute of screen time with him. So you don't have that like, oh man, I want this character to get revenge because, we saw this scene with them sharing an intimate moment or sharing a loving moment. We didn't get that in the film. It's just very much matter of fact. And you kind of, which I don't have a problem with doing this with some films, but I don't always like doing a lot of the legwork in the sense of you have to fill in the blanks. You have to fill in like, I would assume this is why they're doing this because of this. Not that the film's telling you this, you're just filling in the blanks. So sometimes, like I said, that makes it feel a little bit disattached from the actual characters and the motivations.
Okay. All right. Well, we talked a little bit about some of the things that didn't move us. Talk briefly about the things that did move you.
As you kind of alluded to, there are some really tense-filled scenes, especially in close quarters. Like I'm pretty sure the scene you were referring to earlier was the home invasion scene, which very much so reminded me a lot of the films you mentioned, but also just thinking back to, within the genre of spies and assassins. I think of Jason Bourne. In particular, I think it was the Ultimatum maybe, but it was the scene where they were in the bathroom. It was just like close quarters. You grab what you can to defend yourself, to kill someone. So it's very much, kill to be killed type of scene, but it's shot so well. And again, just knowing how meticulous and detailed David Fincher is, I would imagine that scene probably took like a week and a half to shoot because he is very like, this has to be here. This has to be here. I was literally watching a video earlier today of like, it was literally a shot that was in the movie for like 3 seconds of like a phone on a coffee table. And he had to make sure that the coffee table was leveled, that it was framed in the shot well. So I can only imagine this action scene was probably something that would take the Russo brothers, 2 weeks to shoot an Avengers scene. He came with that approach with the action scene. So that scene stands out to me. The home invasion. There's a scene with him, the main character, Tilda Swinton, that just shows how great of an actor they are. Like there's not a lot of, level 10 acting as far as like yelling and being upset. It's just a very much a conversation with two people that have been doing this for a while. And it's a conversation about life and death and circumstances that I just really enjoy. So there is just moments of like, you can appreciate the nuance of the performance, the great directing. So there are some scenes that really stood out to me. Again, that Tilda Swinton talking scene and that home invasion is definitely a highlight.
Yeah, you can go on at length about Tilda Swinton. One of the things that we'll probably go in length a little bit during the spoilers. This is just a quick little, not a spoiler. I just wanted more of her. I'll just say it, and I'll just leave it at that.
100%.
So as far as Fincher films go, and for those that are Fincher fans, is this a top 5, top 3, number 1?
For me, nah, not top 3, not nowhere near number 1. I would even just kind of thinking of his filmography. I don't even think this cracks top 5 for me. Because, you know, you got Seven, obviously Fight Club, Zodiac, Social Network. The Game is up there for me. I mean, he only has 10, 11 films, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, this is probably in that top 7 category. Okay. But again, just take into account Fincher is such A++ director. He has like literally some of my favorite films of all time, like Seven, like Zodiac. So it's a high bar to cross. And as I was just again thinking about it overnight, sometimes, you know, not all this is like Michael Jordan back in the day. I'm from Chicago. You know, when Michael dropped 35, 6, and 4, you just like, oh, that's just Michael Jordan doing what he does best. So sometimes directors just do what they do best. It might not be their best work ever, but you can also still appreciate, by no means he hasn't lost a step. He still has the Fincher-isms that I love, but this isn't groundbreaking. This isn't, adding something new to this genre that I love. It's just a fun, cool, very cool film that I appreciate it. But again, I don't consider it his best by far. Nowhere near his top tier type of work.
Okay. And then let's close it out with this. We'll close out this non-spoiler part. Would you recommend seeing this in the theater or just wait until it gets to Netflix?
I'm such a lover of film, man, that I always recommend someone to support these these mid-budget films, because as we see a lot in today's conversation of 200 million on this film, 300 million, it's like, what are they doing with the money? So I want to people to support more of these mid-budget films so we can get more in the theater and experience that type of films that we just don't get enough of. So I personally would say it's worth seeing in theaters, as well as this film does require a level of attention to kind of pay attention to the narrative, as well as staying along with this character that can be sometimes, a bit of a slow burn. So yes, to answer your question, long story short, I would recommend seeing it in the theater, but I can understand why someone would want to wait in the comfort of your own home, because it is, with inflation and, things going on in the world, might not be the most top of priority to go see the most latest David Fincher film, but I would say it's worth the theatrical experience personally.
Okay. Yeah, I'll co-sign on that. I think for my reasons for saying that is that this is one of those films that has to have a theater experience. There's a lot of dark tones that go along with it. As far as like aesthetically, not emotionally, where you'll need that big screen to kind of like sort through some stuff, especially during that fight scene. They do some really amazing things with the sound design. That theater experience is you really need to hear like fists hitting flesh. You need to hear the guns pop. You need to. There's a lot of quiet moments that you get with some of these characters, and you want to kind of like be soaked in. And unless you have like a super, super high end home entertainment system, you're just going to miss. It's just going to be that simple. This is a film for me for the theater. So for those of you that are planning to watch it on Netflix, you may get a different kind of a feeling out of it, because the story may not necessarily hold up for you if you're watching it on a small screen. And so you may need to lean on some of the other things in order to get full enjoyment. Hey, I think we've gone on pretty well about this. We're going to go ahead and hop straight into some of the spoilers. I want to give everybody an opportunity to prepare themselves. But before all of you take off, Elliot, let them know how they can get in contact with you real quick.
Yeah, man. Well, listen, I'm excited to talk spoilers with you, but as far as this non-spoiler goes, really great conversation. You guys can find me on YouTube talking about this film, and this is that time of the year that I love when we get these kind of more Oscar-driven films. So if you like to talk about things like David Fincher, Martin Scorsese, the list goes on and on and on. Definitely check me out here on YouTube at Movie Files.
And don't worry if you didn't catch all that. There'll be a link in the description that you can click on. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. I'm telling y'all, he's every day. He's got something for you. He got something for you every day. I appreciate that hard work. And for those of you all who are still hanging on to hear some of these spoilers, I just want to warn you, we are talking spoilers. Warning, 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 warning. We are about to hop into spoilers. Okay, so, where do we get started with some of the spoilers? Let's start with the big obvious thing for me, and that is the story as a whole. From beginning to end, did it hold your attention? And if not, where did it kind of lose you?
I would say, even though again I didn't consider this to be one of Fincher's best work, I was pretty much locked in from the jump, which is I didn't, I don't usually look at my watch or my phone while I'm watching a movie, but it felt like the first 20 minutes of the film was on that one mission, which was the mission that set this whole chain of events, which is to kill this unnamed political person, I assume, or someone in finance that was, hired to be killed, and he messes up and doesn't kill the girl. But leading up to that point, this isn't the sexiest, most attractive, most glorious look into an assassin's life like we might expect with like a Bond or John Wick, even, where it's like very stylized in the sense of like not necessarily like glorifying this, assassins, but this isn't the most cookie cutter way of showing how someone could sit down for hours and days studying their mark, studying their client. Like, it gets there. So I'm like, I thought that was, if I'm being honest with you, I'm like, is this the whole film? Are we just gonna watch him in this apartment and maybe getting flashbacks of other jobs? Obviously, it wasn't that, but no, to be honest with you, I was locked into this idea of like it can be tedious. Some might say it might be boring, but I find it very, intriguing. The inner monologue of this character, of him talking about, don't trust anyone. It's about the details, the music choice that he had, and leading up into all the stuff there, the WeWork apartment that he has, and him talking about how he disguises himself as like this German tourist, how he likes to play in the shadows, and how he's so observant of like people and their behaviors, like the scene where he's like getting McDonald's, and as you mentioned, this American Psycho, that's a very much American Psycho thing, taking off the bread of his McDonald's breakfast there. So I like all that stuff, because as the film went on, that's the most backstory we got from the character, because everything else is just like, we're just seeing sequences of events versus like, let's spend time with like him and who he thinks he is and what he thinks of himself. Because like I said, the rest of the film is just like boom, boom, boom. Not as much of that as we got in the beginning. So I was locked in from pretty much the beginning, and there's really not a low point or a point I was kind of checking out, because I was just like, I was kind of on the edge of my seat, like, I don't know where we're going to go next. I mean, we're in Chicago, we're in New York, we're, overseas. So I'm like, I was along for the ride.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you on a lot of that as well. The story is very straight to the point.
Yes.
This is a man who's going to get his revenge, and that's it. That is legitimately the movie. He messed up. He messed his shot. They went back and killed his boo thing, and he's like, I'm killing everybody that had anything to do with this, and that's it. You roll credit. So if you're looking for any depth, if you're looking for some cool little twist, if you're trying to find the inner meaning behind the why, this is not for you. This is not that. And it's very, very slow paced. Let me be clear. It is extremely slow paced. So for this generation of moviegoers who put their bread and butter in films like John Wick, you're probably going to have a problem with this. John Wick is all about the stylization. It's all about the bright lights. It's all about the cool gunplay. This is kind of like, you remember, oh my gosh, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, right? There's this teacher that Ferris Bueller has. And he's just sitting there like, today we're going to study Bueller. Are you here? It's like that, but for an assassin movie. Now, don't get me wrong. The information that he's talking about is awesome. Like the intricacies of what goes on into living this lifestyle. It is fascinating. But the way it's told, the storytelling element of it is very, very slow. I mean, I'd say maybe like late 80s kind of slow, some Kurosawa kind of slow, some it's that. So you have to have patience. But I did love the appreciation of the detail within the story, because you see things step by step, pace by pace, especially with his process as to how he is this type of assassin. Everything from the yoga that he does to his breathing techniques to him napping at certain times. Like you're going to see all of that, like in all of its splendor.
Registering his heart rate, all the details.
So be prepared for that. But when the story does jump off and you're like, just when I got to a bit of a breaking point, I'm like, yo, something's got to happen. And right when I got to that point, we got hit with the fight scene. Speak on that a little bit from your opinion regarding what you thought and what you took away from it.
Yeah, I mean, so at that point, he messes up on the assignment. We go from that to he finds his girl, Dominican Republic's been injured. I think that was her brother-in-law that he said this will never happen again or whatever.
Yes.
And then he goes on his mission. He finds a taxi driver. He kills him. And then like you just mentioned, he goes to the New Orleans at that point. Or did he visit his lawyer friend first and then went to
visit his lawyer friend? Yeah. And New Orleans first. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And by the way, I love that actor whose name is slipping me right now. He's just like
Charles Parnell.
Man, that man's voice is smooth as butter, man. That is a smooth, cool, collective cat. I love seeing him popping up in Mission Impossible or popping up in what was he in The Mandalorian randomly in season 3.
Top Gun.
Top Gun.
Top Gun,
excellent. So, by the way, that was a scene that caught me off guard because that was very much to your comparison to American Psycho, getting the bin and putting his body in there and shooting them with the nail gun, and snapping that Dolores, she's got her neck snapped. But in that, and I'm gonna go back to this action scene, but I will say that moment there showed a little bit of his human side because she. He don't trust anyone, don't listen to anyone. He kind of listened to her dying wish, which he didn't want to make it seem like she died of just crazy circumstances or murdered, but she fell down the stairs and broke her neck. So he kind of, a little humane side to him, which I appreciate that.
Yeah, a little bit. Okay, all right.
a little bit of remorse and empathy for someone he's going to kill for no reason. Well, not for no reason, but the action scene, it's in New Orleans. They set it up perfectly. We see that these are a bunch of, quote unquote, meatheads that were, assigned to beat up his girlfriend. And I think later on, as Tilda Swinton's character said, I didn't tell them to do what they did to her. They just, they're meatheads. They're kind of Goonies. So, I love the setup again, the meticulous detail, him sitting out, scouting them, watching them, hope they don't have a sleepover. Because if that one dude, who, by the way, I looked it up, the guy that he fought was the stuntman of the main villain of the Lord of the Rings series, or Sauron. He voiced and embodied the Sauron character. So
really?
he's a well-known like stunt actor. And to be able to get him on the screen, was a great. That action sequence was phenomenal, and I love that much. So, like I said, I love the scene because, as you mentioned earlier, it shows the tight quarters, two assassins. It's not cute, it's not sexy, it's not fancy. It's just I need to survive. So we're seeing them grabbing bongs and glass and knives, the guns involved. I love that whole sequence. I mean, I'm a dog guy, so I was so glad they didn't kill the dog. But we really would have went John Wick with it. But no, I really much so thought that was definitely a standout sequence. That's the only like quote unquote action sequence of the film, but it's an action sequence that I thought was phenomenally well choreographed.
Yes. Yeah, so let me thank you for that. Let me just address this comment that was in the chat from Sagnesia. Thank you for your comment. I said I don't see much buzz for the Oscars for this. Is it because a neo-noir action thrillers don't get nominated? David Fincher played it safe for his standards. That's interesting. I don't know if he played it safe. Do you think he played it safe?
No, I wouldn't say he played it safe, but I think to the Oscar of it all, I don't think it has that weight to it. Like it doesn't have like, the big standout character arc, character breakdown. The motivations are kind of lacking. So of course, when you hear Fincher, you immediately kind of think probably Oscar worthy, whether it's Mank, whether it's Gone Girl. But yeah, it doesn't. I don't think he was making an Oscar type of film. I think he was just making a film that he, this is going back in his old bag, going to that Seven Zodiac type of vibes, Panic Room type of vibe. He's just making a film. But I think this is kind of like a palate cleanser to probably his next film in a couple of years will probably be that more heavy Oscar worthy, Oscar baity type of film. I think he's just making a cool action film and having fun with it, and not really worried about. Nor did I think he's ever like making a film to win awards. But I don't think this film was created to be an award winning type of movie.
I absolutely co-sign on that. I had even heard something to the effect that if Fassbender hadn't signed on, that the project probably wouldn't have even gotten started to begin with. Fincher's, I think, is in this point in his career now where he doesn't really have anything to prove. Exactly. So you could do your passion projects, right? I heard he was a big fan of the it's not a webtoon, the graphic novel. So he's like, I'm chilling. They shot this during the time of COVID as well. So it's like, well, why not work on a bit of a passion project? Exactly. It makes perfect sense for it. You touched on something that I think is very important in this film regarding, you're like, man, I hope he doesn't kill the dog during the fight scene. And why that's important is because there is this very weird balance about our central character's morality. Right. Like, can you root for him? I mean, is he justified in some of the things that he's doing? Like, it's really hard to gauge. And to me, that was a bit of a problem, especially the way it ended, because it ended with there not being really any consequences, or maybe like did he learn or change? Like, how did you feel about the morality of this character?
That's a great question, because it is, to me, it's a hard thing to root for a killer that's literally killing people for money. At least that's what, we don't know any other motivations of why he did this or why he got into this industry. You just assume, again, filling in the blanks, you assume it's just for the money of it all and the lifestyle that comes with it. It's hard to, I wouldn't say I was rooting for him, because it is like, especially I think of the Dolores, like she didn't seem to cause any harm. She actually helped him out. Of course she wanted, she didn't, want to kill him at any point. She wanted to escape. But I think the way I kind of, in my mind, kind of justify, not necessarily, again, not rooting for him, but we're looking at him killing people within his field of industry. Like, he wasn't like killing kids or killing like random people. Like, these people happen to be involved in this assassin world. So one would assume, again, that John Wick of it all, that he's, the evils taking out the other evil people. So again, not justifying murder, not justifying what he did in this film, but I just assumed that his way of justifying what he was doing, these are people that have killed people, so I can kill them because they're killers like myself. So it kind of detach that normal citizen, innocent person, because they've all got their hands dirty at some point. Even if it is like a secretary that works for the big boss that sets people off to kill people, they all have their hands kind of dirty within this, killer field of job.
I'm with you to a point. There is a scene where that involves a taxi cab driver, and the taxi cab driver is innocent. He's just the guy doing his job. He happened to pick up the assassins that are being sent to kill his family, or kill his girlfriend, and he catches them, questions them, and then just murders them like in cold blood. And that's relatively early in the movie. It's in the first quarter. It's in the first quarter of the movie, and it kind of is like, oh, okay, that was an innocent dude. I don't know. But then for me, there's always the rule, like babies, dogs, and old people, right? Those are like the three things like you can't kill. And just before he goes to Florida, and it's in Florida when he has that fight scene. That's my bad. I gave you the wrong setting for that, for this amazing fight scene. And there's this dog, it's like a pit bull. And at first I was like, man, he's gonna poison the dog. The dog's gonna die. He's gonna be a full blown villain. Come out, you see the dog is asleep. I was like, ooh, okay, maybe. Then the dog gets loose, he runs in the house, and I'm like, I already think he's kind of a villain, but I'm like, if he kills this dog, that's breaking the full blown rule. Babies, dogs, and old people, you can't come back from that. And he lets the dog live, and I was like, that's very important, because it's way easier to just pop the dog and keep it moving, right? Exactly. So I was like, oh, his morality, okay, it's kind of intact. Let me take this question in. Thank you so much for Sagnesia. Thank you. Thank you for your comment. He said it's interesting that you mentioned it's slower pace. The trailer was edited like in 2 times speed. Was it just the marketing didn't reflect the movie, Or were there spot changes that dragged and didn't serve purpose? Spots that dragged, and didn't serve purpose. I think I'll jump on this real quick. I think when you're dealing with a trailer, you have to hook people. It's all about hooks. It's all about hooks. And you can. It's difficult to sell a movie on this on how methodical this character is. That's not going to get people into the theaters. So you have to show some of the faster moments. Let me see. I'm trying to think of something that's kind of close. Maybe Driver was kind of like that. Driver's a little bit.
Gosling, Drive.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a slower kind of movie, but when you saw the trailers, it's like, oh my God, Ryan Gosling, he's going to be this cool kind of thing, and then you watch the movie and it's like, maybe that's not exactly what they sold me or whatever it is. How did you feel regarding the way it's marketed to what you saw?
Yeah. Well, luckily for me, my friend, I have abandoned the trailers to sell me on things years ago. One of which because they spoil everything in trailers, but also too, like if I'm interested in the film, I don't need a trailer to sell me on it. But I understand the game, understand the marketing, because not everyone's like us that are sold on just a director's name. Fincher, Nolent, Scorsese, Dylan, Denis Villeneuve, Spike Lee, like those names, I'm sold no matter what it is. So honestly, I didn't even watch a trailer. I didn't see any of the trailers. I'll probably watch it now just for the sake of this conversation, just after I wonder how they did cut the trailer to kind of sell it. But I didn't see the trailer, but like you just mentioned, I would imagine that it probably was fast-paced, cut, probably similar to what they did with the girl with the dragon tattoo, or in the sense of like picking out the parts that seem exhilarating and seem action-filled. So I would imagine they probably had that action scene in the trailer, which again, you got to get people in the theaters or watch it on Netflix. So you got to put that action in there to sell them on it. But again, for me, Fincher, Fassbender, Swinton, I was already sold off that alone. So
yeah, that part. So let's talk briefly about Swinton and just maybe there was some talent left on the cutting room floor, right? Like left on the editing room floor. I'm a fan of Tilda Swinton. Yeah. She has a presence, right? Ooh. It's just something about her presence, and she gave a phenomenal job. She did a very good job. Maybe first say that, but I was like, you almost could have found somebody else to do this. And if you're going to give me just this little bit, I almost would rather you give me somebody else. I wanted more of her. I wanted that mystery that she has, that will she, won't she kind of thing. It's something about her that she brings in, and you just get a monologue for the most part. You get a monologue and then like this brief moment, and then she's just taken out. Yeah. How did you feel about her performance, and was it enough for you?
I would always prefer wanting more than having less. So even though we didn't get more of her, I would always love that idea of just like, oh, I love that character and that actor and what they were doing so much versus, being like, oh, I could have went without that scene or, whatever the case may be. So I love that she was in this because, as you mentioned, she is such a talented individual. Like she can play, as she has done in multiple films, she could play multiple roles in one movie. Suspiria, I think she played like 3 characters in that film. But I think again, you mentioned how this was shot during the pandemic. This, again, probably being like something that Fincher either knew about prior to the pandemic or maybe came across it and was like, dude, I would love to do this story. Let's get Fassbender, who's doing like race car. He's like an F1 race car driver now. That's why he hasn't make movies in years. Like, okay, cool. So I just imagine like, okay, Fassbender, check. Cool story that I wanted to kind of scratch that itch, check. Who's an actor that would play this scene so well that I would love to work with? And if I'm not mistaken, I don't think Tilda Swinton not Michael Fassbender, but Tilda Swinton and David Fincher, I don't think they've worked together before. So it's like, who's an actor I haven't worked with that I absolutely adore and I admire? Tilda Swinton, can we get her on the phone? Yes, she loves the script. And also too, I think Tilda Swinton is a prestigious enough actress that she only does things that intrigue her. So there was something, and as we saw in the scene, there was something to the character that she enjoyed in that scene in particular that I think she enjoyed that brought her onto the project that I love. Like I said, I would much prefer wanting more than wanting less from an actor, and she played it perfectly, man. Especially again. Don't trust, because he almost played the sympathy card with her when she fell down the stairs for a brief second. Because we saw when she ended up getting shot, she had a knife. She's gonna take him out because she is an assassin herself. She's the expert, as they called it. So no, I love that scene. It's a very Quentin Tarantino-esque type of moment, like a Kill Bill, where you might have wanted more from certain assassins or more backstory for certain assassins, but they do that scene so well that it makes you appreciate them as an artist. So hopefully this is just a trial run that we get to see Tilda Swinton maybe leading the next Fassbender film. Maybe it was just like not an audition because she doesn't need auditions, but
she does not need to audition.
Let me open that door, and maybe this is a greeting, a card to say, hey, let's do this again in the future.
All right. Bet. There's something. This is. I'm going off the reservation just a little bit. Just something that I really appreciated in this film, and that is, even though it can be tedious, there is a coolness, like I said, regarding like the teacher that's telling you these cool things but saying in a monotone kind of way. And one of the cool things that I really enjoyed about this is how grounded in reality that this is. As far as like how this assassin goes about getting their tools, setting things up. It's not James Bond, it's not like there's
right?
There's no Q, there's no gadget guys. Like he's shopping at Home Depot, he's buying tools off of Amazon, which I thought was great. Like he sets up a hit out of a WeWork. There was a really awesome throwback to like 80s espionage when they're finding the information on a Rolodex. Like, I don't even know if they even make Rolodexes anymore. The guy that he goes to in order to, the lawyer that he goes to get his hits, it wasn't in some skyscraper with the state of the art
USB that you can only get.
They even say it in the film. It's like, oh, this is like an old 1980s lock. That's easy to pick. He walked up in there and he looked like a regular old dude that you would see, advertising as an ambulance chaser on a billboard. There was just, it was very, very grounded. I appreciated that because I've never really seen that before in an assassin movie. It's always like this cool gadget or this cool trick or this thing that whatever. Everything, it was like, nah, man. It was almost, you know what it was? This is what it reminds me of. So in the 80s, I'm an old head. In the 80s, there was this television show called MacGyver. Way back in the day. And the whole premise of this guy was that he could get out of any situation as long as he had like a stick of bubble gum and like a hairpin or whatever it is. And he can get out of it. Now, what a lot of people don't know about that particular show is that the very first season, it really was, they actually hired a guy who was able to do these things with these real objects in order for MacGyver to get out of these situations. But the problem happened is that people were actually using those things in real life to do, nefarious random things with it. And people were getting hurt. So the studio was like, no, we can't really do that anymore. We'll just kind of hint around to it. I feel kind of like that about this film. I'm like, it's pretty detailed. It's some things that I wouldn't have thought about. It's like, if I want to be that kind of person. I'm not saying this is be clear. I am not saying you do that, but it felt like that. It felt dangerous in the type of information that they were given. Maybe that's the better way to kind of put it. So I know we're getting a little bit closer towards the end. So let's start getting a little bit more towards the good, bad, and the ugly.
Sure.
Give me as far as with spoilers. Talk to me about some of the good.
I would say, and spoilers, and I think we kind of allude to it, but I just want to make sure I make it known that Michael Fassbender is an excellent actor. Like I said, he's been in the last 4 or 5 years. He's, a family man with another incredible actress, Alicia Vikander. They have a kid now. He's doing that, and he's driving cars. So he's very detailed on what movies he chooses to do. And I appreciate that about an actor. I just wanted to see him in more because I think he's just so fantastic. So the good to me is Michael Fassbender, because I think, as we kind of talked about with Tilda Swinton, that maybe you could have got someone else to get it, even though I thought she was perfect in the role. I think you get Michael Fassbender, I think you alluded to, that if he didn't sign on, this would be no film, because it takes a very particular actor to carry. He's in every scene. He isn't, like I said, he's not James Bond. He doesn't have the suave of James Bond. He isn't, as equipped as John Wick. He is a kind of just, I don't want to say regular, but he is just, like you kind of mentioned, the groundedness of it. He's just someone you can probably see running 7 miles every morning and you think they're just a normal Joe, but he's really an assassin. And the way Fassbender plays it, Again, there's not a lot of big moments. He's not screaming or yelling. There's not a lot of emotions given. It's all in the eyes. It's all in the mannerisms. So I think the good of this film is that it puts the weight of the film on going through this very meticulous journey through this very kind of, I don't want to say sterile, but very kind of just regular character without a lot going on, on a stylized side of it all. So I thought Fassbender was great. I think that he is a killer in real life. Like, I think he is a psychopath. He plays it so well. Like, I know people poo-poo on Prometheus and Covenant, but he was one of the standouts for me as the robot, the David character. Like, he is just such a detail, precision. And I think, like I said earlier, him and Fincher just go hand in hand. Like, Fincher's so detailed and meticulous and so, about the book and has to go this way. I feel like David kind of put himself into this character because we saw how detailed he was, and I thought Fassbender played it off perfectly. Like, I believe he's a killer in his off time when he's not racing cars or being a dad.
I agree. He does feel dangerous, and there's a scene where he absolutely comes from is he dangerous to he's dangerous to he's absolutely terrifying, and that's when he meets the lawyer. And the lawyer kind of like plays the card that you kind of typically see in a lot of films. It's like, well, you need me and this, that, and the third, and you need to really rethink this and this, blah, blah, blah. And Fassbender gets a nail gun and puts 3 in him, bing, bing, bing. And he's like, you're about to bleed out, so I'm gonna need that information. That part was terrifying. I was like, that's him. That's him in that moment. And I was absolutely like completely all in after that regarding is he dangerous? I guess some of my good that I really like, Fincher's style, if you're a Fincher fan, his style is maintained. So you won't be surprised. I think it's I enjoyed some of the breakdowns of what it means to be assassin. It's a bit of a if you're kind of like what's the word I'm looking for? If you're tired of like the super fast pace, like John Wick, and I love John Wick. Same. This is a good break. It's a good break to kind of like get back to old school cinema in some ways. The editing isn't old school cinema, but the pacing is old school cinema. Some of that, you definitely get some of that old world espionage. There's a cartoon, anime. I'm sorry, I don't want y'all cutting my throat. Old school like Go 13 from way back in the day, modern one like oh my gosh, what was his name, the American. It's kind of a little bit like that. I like that the story was straightforward.
Point.
You don't have to worry about any weird hooks or anything like that, which it's all meat. It's a big piece of meat, but it's all meat. And let's see, there was and I liked as much as I disliked not knowing if I should like this character. In moments I liked it, and then there's times where it kind of was like, I don't know, man. I don't know how I feel about this dude. And of course, the thing that I really loved is the cinema experience that it gives. So that's why I recommend if you are going to see this, you should really see it in the theater. I think it's going to be out in like a few days, actually.
Limited release on the 27th. Yep.
And then let's close out. We're rounding third. Let's close out with the bad and the ugly. You can combine them. What's the things that kind of irked you or rubbed you the wrong way?
Nothing much on like a frustrating level. I'm a sucker for being in spy, espionage, assassin world. So I'm just a sucker for world building. So I love when a film kind of gets into the minutia of like, okay, we have a headquarters in Chicago. We have the lawyer, but who's above the lawyer? Who's below the lawyer? How did the lawyers get all wrapped into this? So like, I just love those type of detailed things that we didn't get in this film. It wasn't the purpose of the film. I just wanted that because I love those type of details and this type of genre. So that was something that was a little bit bad for my personal taste. But narratively speaking, again, we talk about how simple it is. It's almost too simple to a fault where, like I said, the biggest issue was there's not enough of the development of a character, backstory, relationships to make him wanting to get avenge his girlfriend. We don't even know this girl. We don't know if she's an assassin. They almost allude to it where, again, the brother-in-law was like, hey, I stay out of y'all business, la, la, la. And then by the time he gets his girlfriend in, it seems like she's very much somewhat aware that he is who he is. I don't know if she fully knows. I don't know, hell, if she's an assassin herself. So it's like all those little, again, it's a very detailed movie, but it's like all that stuff is kind of absent from the film, which probably would have made it, 2.5. I know everyone's complaining about runtime nowadays, but that probably would have bloated the film. So I think, again, Fincher was just more concerned on like, I want to show you guys the inside of the mind of an assassin, which I think he did a good job of doing so. But it's all that extra stuff, going back to an Oscar conversation. It's all that stuff that kind of takes it off the conversation of like one of the best films of the year. I know for some people, like they're quoting it as their favorite of the year, which to each their own. But to me, it just kind of lacks that punch. It doesn't have like a good. I'll be honest, I didn't really care for the ending because it was like you talked about earlier. It was like we did all this to get to this rich client that hired people to kill you and then, ultimately end up hurting his girlfriend, to just let him go straight clean. Like you're just taking his word. Like you killed all these other people who didn't pose as much of a threat, but the one person that actually threatened your life and hired people to kill you, you just let them go free and you just say, hey, don't do it again or I'll hunt you down. Like, come on, bro. That seemed a little bit anticlimactic for my taste. So the ending was probably a very much a negative for me because it was very much underwhelming. Like all the stuff built into that to just be like, go free. Don't do it. This is a slap on the wrist. I prove to you I can break into your house so I can do it again. Like maybe you won't do it again because you might not live because you just let this man go away. But I don't know. Maybe it says that he, over the course of the film, he maybe trusted people more, maybe, and he's going to take the man's word for it. Sure.
Yeah, I think you hit my biggest gripe. The ending just, to me, it just wasn't good. I was left hanging. I was like, yo, that's it. That you just go let them go, like you said. And in a world now where a lot of people are going by the mantra of eat the rich, this billionaire person is a perfect example of being the bad guy. And it's hard for me to justify him letting him go when you killed the cab driver. The cab driver to me was like a bit of a litmus test for me. I was like, of where your morality is. And then you just let this dude go, like who went out of his way to hire somebody to murder somebody, and you let that man go. I was like, that is a huge disconnect. And then there was and then it just ends with him like hanging out with his girlfriend. There was a part like they're in the very beginning of the scene when he hops on in the very beginning, when he hops on the plane, they showed this guy with like these different colored socks, and they showed it a lot. And I was like, dang, is this dude gonna pop up? So in my head, I'm thinking in the end, because Tilda Swinton gives this line where she says, when your time comes, you'll be thinking about me. And I'm like, oh, they're setting it. They're setting this up for
pop him over the head.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, I'm connecting the dots. I'm like, the dude in the blue socks, we haven't seen him again. She's already letting the audience know that your time is going to come. And then we get to the end and he's just sitting there, like having mojitos with his lady. And they're like, end, done, roll credits. I'm like, what?
After.
What happened? What do you... That's it? That's what you're gonna give me? So that part was frustrating. I'm not gonna lie, that part was very frustrating. But maybe there was no more story to tell, and maybe that's a reason for you to all go out and support the original creator of the graphic novel, because maybe there'll be a different version of how that goes. And then my last question is, do you want to see a sequel?
No, I don't think Fincher is a sequel guy. I know his first film happened to be a third movie of a franchise, was The Aliens, which wasn't that great. But no, I don't think I need to see a sequel. By all means, if Fincher announced, I'm going to be there, but I don't think it needs it. I would much rather Fincher, Fassbender, Swinton do something else together and collaborate versus continuing the story that I don't think is necessary to follow up on.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, that's a good place to go and stick a pin in this. Thank you all so much for spending your time. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you chose to be here. And I am so happy to show to the rest of our subscribers and the viewers. Movie Files, please go out of your way to check them out. Ellie, you got any closing words you want to say to anybody?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, again, thank you for having me on. We've been talking about collabing for a while. For all of my West Coast hip hop fans, this felt like detox. This was in the working for a while. We finally got it, and it was fun. And hopefully, this is one of many to come in the future. But thank you for having me on. But yeah, you guys can find me here on YouTube talking about the latest movies and some various shows. I'm on, I was gonna say Twitter, but X. I share a lot of my opinions on X when it comes to like out of theater reactions. Where else? Instagram, TikTok, Letterboxd. So all those social media platforms, you all can find me on there.
Like I said before, it is absolutely worth your time. Thank you all so much. If you've just been enjoying this conversation, just the way we casually chop it up, make sure you hit that subscription button if you haven't already. And of course, give us that thumbs up, and the bell icon's going to let you know when the new content drops. All right, so with that being said, thank you all for your time. We'll catch y'all on the next episode. Y'all take care. Peace.